The sharp crack of flesh against flesh echoed through the crowded platform, a sound that cut through the din like a knife. Elijah Washington felt the sting bloom across his cheek, hot and immediate, as if someone had pressed a branding iron to his skin. The world tilted for a moment under the fluorescent lights of Osaka's Umeda station, those harsh neon bulbs flickering like judgmental eyes from above. He staggered back a step, his worn leather wallet slipping from his fingers and scattering coins across the grimy tile floor, yen clinking and rolling away into the sea of hurried feet. Around him, the rush-hour crowd paused, a ripple of whispers and pointed stares spreading like ripples in a pond. Phones came out, screens glowing as strangers captured the moment, their faces a mix of shock and morbid curiosity. But no one moved to help. No one said a word. And in that instant, Elijah, a 72-year-old black man from the heart of Chicago, felt the weight of being an outsider crash down on him all over again. Hey there, friends. If you're watching this, I want you to picture it with me. The kind of scene that sticks with you, that makes your stomach twist because it's so raw, so real. We're not talking about some far-off drama. This is everyday life for too many people, wrapped up in a story of hurt and hope. Let me pull you into this world, step by step. Because Elijah's tale isn't just about one slap in a train station. It's about dignity in the face of ugliness, about holding your head high when the world tries to push you down. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see how one man's quiet strength can shake things up in ways no one saw coming. It was a typical Tuesday morning in Osaka, the kind where the air hums with energy and urgency. Umeda Station, one of the busiest hubs in Western Japan, was alive with the symphony of urban life. Trains rumbled in and out like mechanical beasts, their doors hissing open to spill out waves of commuters, salarymen in crisp suits clutching briefcases, students with backpacks slung over shoulders, families juggling shopping bags from the massive department stores that tower around the station like modern-day fortresses. The smell of street food wafted through the concourse. Takoyaki sizzling on griddles, the savory tang of okonomiyaki pancakes mixed with the faint metallic scent of the rails and the earthy undertone of rain-dampened concrete from last night's shower. Lights everywhere, neon signs advertising everything from ramen shops to high-speed Shinkansen tickets cast a kaleidoscope of colors on the faces rushing by. It's a place where millions cross paths daily, a crossroads of lives in this vibrant city. But on this day, it became the stage for something far more personal. Elijah had been navigating this chaos for years now. Born and raised in the windy streets of Chicago, he'd served his country as a young man in the U.S. Army, shipping out to bases around the world during the tail end of the Vietnam era. Those days had taught him resilience, the kind forged in boot camps and barracks, where you learn to stand tall no matter the storm. After retiring from a steady job as a mechanic back home, he'd followed his son to Japan 5 years ago. His boy, James, had built a life here, marrying a local woman and climbing the ranks in ways Elijah could only beam with pride about. Osaka had become his adopted home, a place of contrasts. The polite bows and quiet efficiency he admired, offset by moments of isolation that reminded him he didn't quite blend in. At 72, with salt and pepper hair cropped short and a frame that still carried the straight-backed posture of a soldier, Elijah moved through the world with a gentle determination. He wore a simple navy cardigan over a button-up shirt, his American flag pin, a small tarnished emblem from his service days, pinned neatly to the collar. It was his quiet nod to where he'd come from, a piece of home he carried everywhere. That morning, Elijah was just trying to get to his weekly routine, a short train ride to a nearby community center where he volunteered, helping teach English to kids from immigrant families. Nothing fancy, but it gave him purpose, a way to give back in this new chapter of life. He approached the ticket machine, fishing out his wallet with hands that bore the scars of decades of hard work, calluses from wrenches and rifles alike. The machine beeped softly as he inserted his coins, the digital screen flashing his fare. Around him the crowd surged, but he felt eyes on him already. Subtle at first, like a prickle on the back of his neck. A group of young office workers glanced his way, their conversation dipping into hushed tones. One of them, a woman in a neat skirt suit, averted her gaze quickly when he looked up. It wasn't new to him, the stares the space people sometimes gave. In Japan, where homogeneity was the norm, his dark skin and foreign features made him stand out like a lone tree in a field. But Elijah had learned to brush it off, to focus on the kindnesses. The shopkeeper who always smiled when he bought his morning onigiri, the neighbor who waved from her balcony. As he pocketed his ticket and turned toward the platform, that's when it started. A man in his 40s, dressed in a rumpled business suit with a loosened tie, let's call him Hiroshi Tanaka, brushed past him a little too roughly. Elijah stepped aside politely, murmuring a soft, "Sumimasen," the Japanese apology he'd picked up early on. But Hiroshi stopped, turning with a scowl that twisted his features. He was average height, with slicked back hair and the harried look of someone who'd had a bad morning commute already. "What are you doing here?" Hiroshi muttered, loud enough for nearby ears to catch. His voice carried that edge, the kind laced with frustration and something deeper, uglier. Elijah paused, his brow furrowing. He wasn't sure if the man was talking to him at first, but the stare confirmed it. "I'm sorry," he replied in his accented Japanese, keeping his tone even. Inside, a flicker of unease stirred, memories of similar encounters back home, where words could escalate fast. But he pushed it down, reminding himself, this is Japan. People are polite. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Hiroshi didn't back down. He stepped closer, his breath smelling faintly of coffee and cigarettes. "People like you," he said, his voice rising just a notch, drawing a few curious glances from passers-by. "Crowding our stations, acting like you own the place. Go back where you came from." The words landed like stones, explicit and cutting, shocking in their directness. Elijah felt a heat rise in his chest, not just anger, but a deep, weary hurt. He'd heard variations before, whispers on the street, online comments when videos of foreigners went viral, but never so bold, so public. Around them, the crowd began to slow, forming a loose circle without meaning to. A student pulled out his phone, starting to record discreetly. Whispers rippled. "What's going on? That foreigner. He looks angry." Elijah took a breath, his military training kicking in. Stay calm, assess, don't escalate. "I'm just buying a ticket, sir. I'm not bothering anyone." His voice was steady, but inside, doubts swirled. Why me? Why now? He thought of James, his son, who always told him to document these things, to not let them slide. But right now, all he wanted was to board his train and leave this behind. But Hiroshi wasn't done. Emboldened by the attention, he puffed up his chest, pointing a finger at Elijah's face. "Not bothering? Your kind always causes trouble. Look at you, standing there like you're better than us." The insults grew sharper, more personal. "Black monkey, thinking you can just waltz in here." Laughter erupted from a couple of young men nearby, their chuckles like daggers. Others joined in with murmurs, pointing and nodding. "Yeah, why are they even here?" one said. "Taking up space." Phones multiplied, flashes going off as the mockery built. Elijah felt exposed, like he was on display in a zoo. His cheeks burned, not just from the impending slap, but from the humiliation of it all. The crowd's whispers turned to open jeers, a wall of faces judging him for nothing more than existing. He tried to move past, clutching his ticket tighter. "Please, let me through." But Hiroshi blocked his path, shoving him hard in the chest. Elijah stumbled back, his shoulder hitting a pillar. Pain shot through his arm, but it was the symbolism that stung more, the physical assertion of, "You don't belong." Coins from his earlier drop scattered further, kicked by indifferent feet. The crowd's laughter swelled, a chorus of mockery that drowned out the station announcements. "Look at him! Can't even stand straight!" someone shouted. Elijah's heart pounded, a mix of fear and rage bubbling up. He thought of his service days, facing down worse. But this was civilian life, supposed to be safe. A brief moment of humanity flickered. Aiko, a young station attendant in her uniform, hovered nearby, her eyes wide with concern. She looked like she wanted to step in, her hand twitching toward her radio, but the crowd's energy held her back. The tension coiled tighter. Hiroshi's face reddened, feeding off the audience. "You think you can ignore me? Say something!" He grabbed Elijah's arm, yanking him forward. Elijah pulled away, but the grip was iron. "Let go," he said firmly, his voice cracking just a bit. Inside, turmoil raged. Part of him wanted to fight back, to shout about his rights, his life here. But he knew better. Escalation could make it worse. The whispers turned to chants, low and mocking. "Go home, go home." Phones captured every angle. The humiliation total now. A public spectacle. Then it came. The slap. Hiroshi's hand swung out, connecting with Elijah's cheek in a brutal arc. The impact reverberated, stars bursting in Elijah's vision. He tasted blood where his lips split against his teeth. The crowd gasped, but the laughter didn't stop entirely. Some even cheered. Elijah touched his face, feeling the welt rising, his flag pin glinting defiantly under the lights. Pain throbbed, but so did resolve. This wasn't just about him anymore. As the station spun around him, Elijah reached into his pocket, fingers closing around his phone. His hands didn't shake. Years of discipline saw to that. He scrolled to his contacts, thumb hovering over James's name. The crowd watched, Hiroshi smirking in victory. But Elijah's mind was clear. Enough was enough. He pressed call, the ringtone cutting through the noise like a lifeline. And as it connected, he wondered if this was the moment everything changed. You know, in those split seconds, Elijah felt the weight of every stare, every whisper that had built up over the years. Living in Osaka, he'd grown to love the cherry blossoms in spring, the festivals with their lanterns glowing like fireflies, the quiet respect in everyday interactions. But moments like this stripped that away, leaving him raw. He'd come here for family, for a fresh start after losing his wife back home. James had been his anchor, pulling him across the ocean with promises of a good life. And it had been good, mostly. Walks along the Dotonbori Canal, the neon lights reflecting on the water like a dream. But the undercurrent was always there. The empty seat next to him on the subway, the way shop clerks sometimes followed him a little too closely, the kids who pointed and giggled. It wasn't overt hatred every day, but a subtle erosion, like waves wearing down a rock. Flash back a bit with me, to understand Elijah better. Back in Chicago, he'd grown up in a neighborhood where survival meant being tough, but fair. His parents had instilled in him the value of hard work. His dad, a factory worker, his mom, a nurse. Joining the army at 18 had been his ticket out, a way to see the world and prove himself. He'd served with honor, earning that flag pin through sweat and sacrifice. Retirement had brought peace, but loneliness too, until James's career took him to Japan. "Dad, come stay with us," James had said over the phone one night. "The kids would love to have Grandpa around." So Elijah packed up, trading Midwest winters for Osaka's humid summers. He learned the language slowly, bowing when appropriate, appreciating the harmony in society. But harmony, he realized, often meant conformity, and he stuck out. That morning had started ordinarily. Elijah woke in his small apartment in a quiet suburb, the sun filtering through rice paper screens. He brewed coffee, strong, black, no sugar, a habit from his army days, and checked his phone. A text from James. "Busy day ahead, Dad. Cabinet meeting. Love you." Elijah smiled, typing back, "Proud of you, son. Stay safe." James never elaborated on his work, but Elijah knew it was important, high up in the police bureau, handling big cases with quiet authority. He didn't pry. Pride was enough. Heading to the station, Elijah had felt optimistic. The volunteer gig at the community center was his highlight, teaching kids phrases like, "Hello, how are you?" and sharing stories from America. It connected him, made him feel useful. But as he navigated the underground passages of Umeda, with its labyrinth of shops and escalators, that prickle returned. Eyes lingering too long, a mother pulling her child closer. Small things, but they added up. Now, post-slap, the pain sharpened his focus. Hiroshi loomed, still ranting. "See? That's what you get for not knowing your place." The crowd's energy fed him, their phones immortalizing Elijah's humiliation. Aiko, the attendant, finally moved closer, her voice tentative. "Sir, please step back." But Hiroshi waved her off. "Mind your business. This guy's the problem." Elijah's phone connected. "Dad? Everything okay?" James's voice, calm but concerned, came through the speaker. The crowd quieted a fraction, sensing something shift. Elijah glanced at Hiroshi, who smirked, unknowing. "Son, there's been an incident," Elijah said softly, his cheek throbbing. Inside, a storm brewed, fear for what might come next, but also a spark of hope. This call could change everything. But for now, the humiliation lingered, heavy as the station air. As James's voice responded, "Tell me where you are. I'm sending help." Elijah felt a glimmer of strength return, but the crowd pressed in, whispers turning to demands. What's he saying? "Call the police!" Irony, that. Hiroshi grabbed for the phone, but Elijah held firm. The tension hung unresolved as sirens wailed in the distance, or was that just the next train? James's voice crackled through the phone, steady and authoritative, cutting through the haze of Elijah's throbbing cheek. "Dad, stay calm. Tell me exactly what's happening. I've got people nearby. I can have officers there in minutes." Elijah gripped the device tighter, his knuckles whitening against the dark skin of his hand as Hiroshi's smirk faltered just a touch. The man hovered too close, his breath hot and ragged, still riding the high of his aggression. Around them, the station's chaos seemed to pause, the rumble of an incoming train vibrating the platform like a distant thunder. Elijah swallowed the metallic taste of blood from his split lip, his eyes locking onto Hiroshi's. "Son, I'm at Umeda Station, Platform 3. A man he assaulted me, shoved me, slapped me. There's a crowd here, filming everything." His words came out measured, but inside a storm raged, anger at the injustice, fear of what might escalate next, and that deep-seated resolve not to let this define him. Hiroshi, sensing the shift but misunderstanding it, lunged forward again. "Who are you calling, old man? Your imaginary friends?" His voice boomed, drawing more eyes, more phones. The crowd thickened, a wall of bodies pressing in with whispers that stung like barbs. He's probably faking it. "Foreigners always cause drama." Laughter bubbled up again, sharp and mocking, as a few young commuters pointed fingers, their faces lit by screen glows. Elijah felt the humiliation deepen, like salt in a fresh wound, the way they reduced him to a spectacle, his dignity stripped layer by layer. But he held the phone steady, James's reassurance anchoring him. "Hold on, Dad. Don't engage. Help is coming." Before Elijah could respond, Hiroshi snatched at the phone, his fingers grazing Elijah's wrist. "Give me that! You're not calling anyone!" The yank was forceful, sending a jolt of pain up Elijah's arm. He pulled back, but Hiroshi shoved him harder this time, chest to chest, the impact knocking Elijah against a bench. His hip collided with the metal edge, a sharp ache blooming there, reminding him of his age, his vulnerability. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps and chuckles, some horrified, others egging it on. "Yeah, show him!" one voice shouted from the back. Phones captured it all, flashes popping like fireworks. Elijah's flag pin caught the light as he steadied himself, a small symbol of his past strength amid the chaos. Inside, turmoil churned. Why won't anyone help? Am I invisible except for my skin? But he remembered his army days. Endure, survive, wait for backup. Aiko, the station attendant who'd been hovering, finally pushed through. Her uniform crisp, Her face flushed with uncertainty, she raised her hands. "Please, sir, step back. This is escalating. We need to calm down." Her voice trembled, but there was a spark of kindness there, a brief oasis in the desert of hostility. Hiroshi whirled on her. "Stay out of it! He's the one causing trouble. Look at
Him, acting all innocent.
He turned back to Elijah, his eyes wild now. "You people think you can come here and disrupt everything? Go back to America, you black intruder." The words were venomous, explicit daggers aimed at Elijah's core, his race, his origin, his very presence. The crowd's mockery intensified, fingers pointing, laughter rolling like waves, whispers turning to open jeers. "He's probably illegal. Why do they let them in?" Elijah felt the weight of it all, his heart pounding, a mix of rage and sorrow. He wanted to shout back, to defend himself, but he knew it would only fuel the fire. Then came another slap, harder this time, Hiroshi's palm connecting with the other side of Elijah's face. The crack echoed off the tiled walls, stars exploding in his vision. He staggered, tasting more blood, his cheeks swelling under the assault. The physical pain was bad, but the symbolic attack, the public degradation in front of strangers, cut deeper. Hiroshi grabbed Elijah's collar, yanking him close. "Apologize for being here! Say it!" The demand hung in the air, humiliating and raw. Elijah's inner voice screamed, "Fight back!" But he bit it down, drawing on that reservoir of resilience. He'd faced worse in uniform, stares and slurs during deployments, but this was supposed to be peacetime. James's voice blasted from the phone, now on speaker by accident. "Dad! Dad! I heard that. Assault in progress. Units are en route. Stay safe." The words pierced the din, and for a split second Hiroshi hesitated, his grip loosening. But the crowd didn't know the context. They surged with curiosity, blocking any escape. Aiko radioed for security, her eyes meeting Elijah's with a silent apology. "Help is coming," she mouthed, a small act of solidarity that warmed him amid the cold hostility. Minutes felt like hours as station security arrived, 2 guards in gray uniforms, badges gleaming under the lights. They pushed through the throng, one barking orders. "Break it up! What's going on here?" Elijah, still clutching his phone, tried to explain. "This man attacked me, unprovoked. I have it on record." But Hiroshi jumped in, his tone shifting to victimhood. "He bumped into me, started yelling in English. I was defending myself." The lies flowed smoothly, and the guards exchanged glances. One, a stern-faced man named Sato, eyed Elijah suspiciously. "ID, please, both of you." Hiroshi produced his wallet quickly, all politeness now. Elijah handed over his residence card, his hands steady despite the ache. What followed twisted the knife. Sato reviewed the cards, then turned to the crowd for quick statements. A few commuters backed Hiroshi. "Yeah, the foreigner started it." He was acting weird. Bias seeped in, subtle but clear, Elijah's foreignness making him the suspect. The other guard cuffed Elijah loosely, for safety, while Hiroshi stood free. "We're taking you both in for questioning," Sato said, but his grip on Elijah was firmer, manhandling him toward a side office. The crowd cheered faintly, phones still rolling. Elijah's humiliation peaked, cuffed like a criminal, paraded through the station, whispers following. "See? They always cause trouble." Inside the small room, fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead, they uncuffed him but kept him seated. Sato grilled him. "Why were you arguing? You know the rules here. Keep the peace." Elijah's fear mingled with anger. "This isn't fair. I'm the victim." James called back during the wait. "Dad, I'm handling this. The local precinct is under my jurisdiction. There might be more to this than meets the eye." His words hinted at something deeper, a clue that prickled Elijah's curiosity. But for now, the isolation gnawed at him. As hours ticked by in that stuffy room, the video from the crowd hit social media. Elijah's phone buzzed with notifications, friends back home messaging in alarm. "Saw the clip, you okay?" But locally, the narrative twisted. Comments flooded in on Japanese forums. Typical foreigner behavior. Why do black people always play the victim? Scornful remarks about his skin, his culture. They don't fit in our society. Elijah scrolled through a few, his stomach churning. The humiliation extended beyond the station into the digital world, where anonymity fueled hatred. He thought of his grandkids, how this might affect them, kids teasing them at school. But a spark of resilience flickered. I've survived wars. I can survive this. Released later with a warning, don't cause more trouble. Elijah stepped out into the evening air, the neon lights of Osaka blurring through unshed tears. His cheek bruised, hip aching, he hailed a taxi home. But on the way, a message from an unknown number, Kenji, the student who'd been filming discreetly. I have the full video, saw what really happened. Want to help? A hidden ally, perhaps. Elijah replied cautiously, hope stirring. At home, in his quiet apartment overlooking the city lights, Elijah nursed his wounds with ice. The TV droned news about local harmony initiatives, ironic given his day. James called again. Dad, that video's going viral. But listen, I've seen patterns like this before. Ignored reports, biased handling. Stay strong. We're uncovering something big. The hint deepened. A secret about the police, maybe? Elijah's mind raced. Other victims? Systemic issues? The next day brought more hostility. At the community center, whispers followed him. A parent pulled her child away. Not today, with that man. Unfair accusations rippled. He caused a scene at the station. Elijah taught his class anyway, his voice steady. But inside, doubt crept in. Is this worth it? He met another black resident, a young engineer named Marcus, during break. Happened to me too, Marcus shared quietly over tea. Racial taunt on the subway, reported it. Police dismissed it as misunderstanding, said I overreacted. The stories matched. Ignored complaints, favoritism toward all locals. Elijah felt a chill. This wasn't isolated. There's got to be more, he murmured. Tension built as Elijah dug subtly, checking online forums. Buried threads about similar assaults on black expats, shoves in crowds, slaps in arguments, all brushed under the rug. One post mentioned leaked emails from police internals, hinting at cover-ups to maintain public order. Elijah's pulse quickened. Proof? But before he could delve deeper, a knock at his door that evening. Hiroshi? No. 2 officers from the local precinct, badges shining. We need to follow up, they said sternly. New complaints about you harassing citizens. Elijah's fear spiked. They were turning it around. Cuffed again, unfairly, belongings rummaged through symbolically, his wallet tossed aside. The drive to the station was silent, humiliating, passers-by staring at the police car. At the precinct, interrogation intensified. Admit you provoked him. Scornful comments slipped in. Your culture clashes here. Elijah's resilience held, but cracks showed. Anger boiling, dignity strained. James's text arrived mid-questioning. Hold on, Dad. I know about the emails, internal memos ignoring discrimination cases. This goes high up. The cliffhanger loomed. As the officers leaned in, demanding a confession, Elijah's phone buzzed with an attachment, a leaked document, proof of scandals. But the room fell silent as footsteps approached the door. James? The air thickened, unresolved, as Elijah wondered if this was the breaking point or the turning. You see, friends, in those grueling hours, Elijah's world shrank to that interrogation room, its walls closing in like a vice. The fluorescent hum overhead mirrored the buzz in his head, a relentless reminder of his isolation. He'd always prided himself on adapting, learning to use chopsticks flawlessly, bowing with just the right depth, even picking up phrases to chat with neighbors about the weather. Osaka had charmed him with its grit and glow. The bustling markets of Kuromon Ichiba, where he'd haggle for fresh sashimi, The serene paths of Osaka Castle Park in autumn, leaves crunching underfoot like memories. But now, those joys felt tainted, overshadowed by the ache in his face and the echo of slurs. Flash to his inner thoughts. Why fight this? At 72, he could pack up, return to Chicago's familiar streets, where at least the discrimination was predictable. But no, James was here. His grandkids with their bright eyes and mixed heritage, calling him Ojeson with giggles. Quitting would teach them to run, not stand. Resilience wasn't just surviving, it was pushing through for them. The precinct smelled of stale coffee and paperwork, a far cry from the vibrant station earlier. Officers Sato and his partner, a younger man named Yamamoto, circled like sharks. "Witnesses say you started it," Yamamoto sneered, sliding photos across the table. Grainy stills from crowd videos, edited to show Elijah aggressively stepping forward. "Your skin stands out, makes people nervous." The comment landed like a punch, cutting deep into his identity. Elijah's hands clenched under the table, but he responded calmly, "That's not what happened. Check the full footage." They laughed it off, blocking his requests, manhandling his phone when he tried to show James's messages. Humiliation layered on. They took his belongings, rifling through his wallet, scattering photos of his family. Cute grandkids. Too bad they're mixed up in this. Symbolic attacks, stripping his privacy. Elijah felt exposed, his dignity frayed. But a moment of humanity. A female officer passing by paused, her eyes softening. "Water?" she offered quietly, slipping him a bottle. Small, but it reminded him not everyone was lost. Outside, the scandal brewed. Marcus texted, "Your video's everywhere. Hashtags trending. Hatch Osaka incident. But trolls are twisting it." Elijah glimpsed the online storm later. Memes mocking his accent, comments like, "Blacks don't belong in Japan." The digital mockery amplified the physical pain, a total assault on his being. Meeting more victims solidified it. After release, another warning, Elijah connected with a support group online. Stories poured in. A Nigerian student shoved on a train, report ignored, a Ghanaian worker slapped in a bar, case closed as mutual. Patterns emerged, police dismissing minority complaints to avoid complications. Elijah's resolve hardened. This is bigger than me. James's hints grew. "Dad, those emails? They're real. Memos instructing officers to downplay foreigner incidents. Keep low, I'm pulling strings." A clue to the twist, but danger loomed. That night, anonymous calls. "Leave Japan, or worse." Fear gripped him, but resilience whispered, "Fight on." As dawn broke, Elijah discovered a forwarded email on his phone. Internal police comms, leaked by an insider. "Ignore discrimination claims from Africans, blacks. Focus on harmony." Shocking proof. But as he read, a shadow at his window, confrontation imminent. Silence fell, heavy and ominous as his door rattled. The door to the interrogation room swung open with the authoritative creak, and there stood James Washington, his presence filling the space like a calm storm rolling in. At 45, with the sharp features that blended his father's strong jawline and his Japanese mother's graceful poise, James cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit, the badge of the Osaka Prefectural Police Bureau pinned discreetly but unmistakably to his lapel. The officers, Sato and Yamamoto, froze mid-sentence, their faces draining of color as recognition dawned. "Director Washington," Sato stammered, snapping to attention. We didn't realize." James's eyes, dark and unwavering, swept the room, landing on Elijah with a mix of concern and quiet fury. "Dad," he said softly, crossing to him in 2 strides and helping him stand. The cuffs, those symbols of unjust restraint, were unlocked in seconds, clattering to the table like defeated chains. Elijah rubbed his wrists, the ache easing not just from the release, but from the sheer relief of seeing his son, his hidden power, his undeniable ally, step into the light. In that charged moment, The air in the room seemed to thicken with the weight of revelation. Elijah could feel the shift, like the first rays of dawn piercing through a long night. He'd held on through the slaps, the shoves, the mocking crowds, drawing on that inner well of strength forged in Chicago's tough streets and army barracks. Now, with James here, it wasn't about power plays or dramatic showdowns. It was about truth emerging, quiet and unyielding. Hiroshi, who'd been summoned back for clarification and was waiting in an adjacent room, was brought in moments later. His earlier bravado had evaporated. Now he shuffled in, eyes downcast, sweat beading on his forehead under the harsh precinct lights. When he saw James, confusion twisted his features, then horror as the pieces clicked. You're the head of the bureau?" he whispered, his voice cracking. James nodded once, his tone measured but laced with steel. "And this man you assaulted is my father. The videos, the witnesses, they don't lie." Elijah watched as Hiroshi's world crumbled, the man who had shoved and slapped him now shrinking before the truth. It wasn't revenge that Elijah felt in that moment, but a profound sense of reclamation, his dignity, battered but unbroken, rising like the sun over Osaka's skyline. Let's linger here a bit, friends, because this turning point deserves it. Imagine the fluorescent buzz overhead, the faint scent of instant coffee lingering from the officers' mugs, the distant hum of the city filtering through the walls. Elijah's cheek still throbbed, a purple welt forming under his dark skin, but his posture straightened, that military bearing kicking in. He'd always been the quiet type, the one who fixed engines with steady hands and raised a son with unwavering support. Coming to Japan had been an act of love, leaving behind the familiar hum of Chicago's trains for Osaka's efficient subways, trading barbecue joints for izakaya pubs where he'd sip sake and share stories. But in this room, with the truth laid bare, he felt a quiet vindication. James placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that spoke volumes. "You're safe now, Dad. Let's end this." The turning point unfolded swiftly, yet with the weight of inevitability. James, leveraging his position, initiated an immediate internal review, pulling in trusted investigators from higher branches. The leaked emails Elijah had glimpsed were just the tip. James had been aware of whispers for months, patterns of negligence that his bureau had been quietly probing. "This isn't about favoritism," James explained to Elijah later as they sat in a quiet corner of the precinct, steaming teacups between them. The steam rose in lazy curls, carrying the subtle aroma of green tea that reminded Elijah of peaceful afternoons in his apartment. "It's about justice. Those memos? They instructed officers to minimize reports from minorities to preserve harmony. But harmony built on silence is no harmony at all." Elijah nodded, his bruised cheek still tender, but his spirit igniting. For the first time in days, he felt seen, not as an outsider, but as a man deserving of respect. They talked then, father and son, about the deeper roots, how James had risen through the ranks facing his own subtle barriers, his mixed heritage a bridge, but sometimes a barrier in a society that prized uniformity. As the investigation deepened, the scandals unraveled like a pulled thread, revealing layers that shocked even the most jaded. Teams pored over records in dimly lit offices, the click of keyboards and rustle of papers filling the air as they uncovered a web of ignored complaints. Dozens of cases involving black residents and other foreigners, taunts on trains, shoves in crowds, even slaps like Elijah's, all dismissed as cultural misunderstandings or filed away without follow-up. One file detailed a Somali student assaulted at a festival in Kyoto, his report buried to avoid negative publicity during tourist season. The young man had described the laughter of the crowd, much like the one at Umeda, echoing in his nightmares. Another involved a Jamaican teacher manhandled by security at a bustling mall in Tokyo, with officers laughing it off as overreaction, leaving her to question her place in a country she'd called home for a decade. The explicit bias shocked even seasoned investigators. Internal chats revealed comments like, "Don't waste time on foreigners, they'll leave anyway," or "Black complaints are exaggerated, focus on real issues." Elijah, invited to review some anonymized files in a secure room, felt a pang of shared pain. "These could have been me," he murmured to James, the weight of collective suffering pressing on him like the humid Osaka air in summer. "Or worse, your kids someday." James's jaw tightened, his resolve mirroring his father's. "That's why we're fixing it, Dad. For them, for everyone." To build the case, witnesses were re-interviewed, their stories adding texture to the narrative. Aiko, the station attendant, came forward first, her uniform still crisp but her eyes fierce with determination. In a small conference room scented with fresh coffee, she recounted the scene, the subtle stares escalating to Hiroshi's insults, the shove that sent Elijah stumbling, the slap that echoed like a thunderclap. "I wanted to help sooner," she admitted, her voice soft but steady. "But the crowd, it was overwhelming. Seeing Mr. Washington stay calm, it gave me courage." Her testimony, captured on video, became a cornerstone, highlighting how bystanders' silence enabled the injustice. Kenji, the student filmmaker, provided his unedited footage, the angles capturing not just the assault, but the crowd's complicity, the pointing fingers, the mocking whispers, the phones turning a human moment into viral fodder. "I filmed for a school project on urban life," Kenji explained, his young face earnest under the lights. "But this showed the ugly side. I couldn't stay silent." Elijah shook his hand afterward, a quiet bond forming. "Your lens captured truth, son. That's power." Hiroshi faced the consequences head-on, his unraveling a study in accountability. Under questioning in a stark room with one-way glass, he broke quickly, admitting his actions stemmed from frustration, but laced with deep-seated prejudice he'd absorbed from online forums and whispered conversations at work. The investigators pressed gently but firmly, drawing out details. How a bad day at the office had boiled over into rage at seeing Elijah, a foreigner in his mind, navigating the station with quiet confidence. "I didn't think he'd have connections," he muttered, head bowed, his rumpled suit now a symbol of his fall. James's response was firm, delivered in a tone that brooked no argument. "That's the problem. You thought it was okay because you saw him as powerless. Assault is assault, no matter who." Hiroshi was charged with assault and hate-motivated harassment, his job as a mid-level manager at a local firm hanging by a thread as his employer distanced themselves amid the growing media storm. The videos from Kenji and the crowd, now viral with millions of views across platforms like YouTube and Twitter, sealed his fate. Public recognition turned to public shaming, with online petitions calling for accountability and boycotts of his company's products. But in a moment of unexpected humanity that added depth to the resolution, Elijah requested a private meeting with Hiroshi before the arraignment. They sat across a simple table in a neutral room, the air heavy with unspoken tension, a single window letting in the soft glow of evening lights from the city below. Hiroshi fidgeted, avoiding eye contact while Elijah sat straight, his flag pin catching the light. "I forgive the slap," Elijah said quietly, his voice steady and laced with the wisdom of years. "The physical pain fades, but the words, the humiliation, they linger. Learn from it. See people for who they are, not what they look like. Ask yourself why you felt entitled to that anger." Hiroshi nodded, tears welling in his eyes, a crack in his armor that hinted at possible change. I'm sorry. Truly. I see now how blind I was." It wasn't a fairy tale redemption, but a real, messy step toward understanding, balancing the story's harsh edges with a glimmer of hope. The antagonists within the system didn't fare better, their downfall a necessary purge. Officers Sato and Yamamoto were suspended pending review, their biased handling exposed through body cam footage and witness statements from Aiko, who stepped forward bravely despite fears of backlash. "I saw it all," she testified in a formal hearing, her voice gaining strength as she described the uneven questioning, the quick dismissal of Elijah's account. They treated him like the criminal from the start, based on nothing but appearances. Higher-ups, including a precinct captain who'd authored some of those damning memos, faced demotions and retraining, or outright dismissal in severe cases, with pensions withheld for the most egregious. James spearheaded the purge, ensuring transparency. Public reports were released, detailing the failures and committing to reforms, with press conferences held in sunlit halls where journalists scribbled furiously. "This bureau will lead by example," he announced at one such event, Elijah standing beside him, his flag pin shining under the flashes. The emotional payoff rippled through Elijah. He wasn't just reclaiming his own dignity, but paving the way for others, a quiet triumph that warmed him like the first sip of coffee on a crisp morning. As word spread, solidarity bloomed in ways that added rhythm and contrast to the narrative's harsher tones. Marcus, the engineer Elijah had met at the community center, organized a forum there, transforming the modest space into a hub of healing. Under soft lighting that cast gentle shadows, with the faint scent of shared tea and baked goods wafting through, victims shared stories, halting at first, then flowing like a released river. "Your courage inspired us," Marcus told Elijah during a break, clasping his hand firmly, their shared experiences forging a bond stronger than words. Kenji, the student, uploaded a full documentary-style edit of the footage to his channel, narrating the events with thoughtful commentary on societal blind spots. It garnered awards at a local film festival, turning a moment of pain into a catalyst for dialogue. Even strangers reached out. A Japanese grandmother from a nearby suburb sent Elijah a handwritten letter, her script neat and deliberate, apologizing for societal blind spots and enclosing a small origami crane folded with care, symbolizing peace and renewal. These acts, small but sincere, provided rhythm to the harshness, contrasts that healed like balm on a wound. The media frenzy added another layer, with reporters camping outside the precinct, their cameras clicking like insistent insects. Elijah navigated it with grace, granting select interviews where he spoke not of anger, but of growth. "This isn't just my story," he'd say, his voice warm and measured over the microphones. "It's about building a society where everyone feels at home, no matter their background." The coverage shifted public perception. Hashtags like #JusticeForElijah for Elijah trended, sparking online discussions that mixed outrage with calls for empathy. In quieter moments, Elijah reflected on the irony. A simple train ticket had unraveled a system of silence, proving that one voice could echo far. Nationally, the inquiries snowballed, creating waves that reached beyond Osaka. Elijah's case prompted a ministry-level review of police protocols across Japan, highlighting institutional biases against minorities in detailed reports that filled conference rooms with stacks of paper and heated debates. Policies shifted incrementally but meaningfully. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training rolled out nationwide, with modules on recognizing hate crimes delivered in interactive sessions where officers role-played scenarios drawn from real cases like Elijah's. Anonymous reporting hotlines for foreigners were established, their lines buzzing with calls that once would have gone unspoken. Community liaisons, positions filled by diverse officers, including those with immigrant backgrounds, were created to bridge gaps, hosting town halls where residents like Marcus could voice concerns without fear. In Osaka specifically, the train stations saw tangible changes. Posters promoting inclusivity adorned the walls, their colorful designs contrasting the stark tiles. Increased patrols were trained to intervene fairly, with body cams mandatory to ensure accountability. Elijah volunteered to speak at these training sessions, his presence a living lesson amid the rows of uniformed listeners. Standing at the front of a lecture hall, the projector casting slides of his story behind him, he'd share, "Resilience isn't fighting alone. It's standing so others can too. I've walked in your shoes, judged, dismissed, but change starts with seeing each other as equals." The officers listened, some nodding thoughtfully, others shifting uncomfortably as the truth hit home. These moments, repeated across precincts, wove a tapestry of progress, each thread strengthening the whole. Months later, Elijah returned to Umeda Station, the same bustling hub, but transformed in his eyes. The neon lights felt warmer, the crowds less daunting as he bought his ticket without incident. A nod from a familiar attendant, Aiko, promoted now to a supervisory role, brought a genuine smile, her wave a silent affirmation of alliance. At home, James visited more often with the grandkids, their laughter filling the apartment as they played with toy trains on the tatami mats, recreating the station scene with happy endings. "Grandpa's a hero," one whispered, hugging him tight, her small hands warm against his cardigan. Elijah chuckled, ruffling her hair, but inside, he knew the truth. Heroes were everywhere, in the allies who spoke up, the systems that bent toward justice, the everyday people choosing kindness over silence. The moral shone through the outcome, clear as daylight. Resilience forged in fire could spark equality, turning personal pain into collective progress. Respect wasn't given. It was earned through unwavering dignity, inspiring hope where there was hurt. And in a world quick to divide, stories like this reminded us that change started with one voice refusing to be silenced. If this tale of strength and redemption touched your heart, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you faced something similar, or seen hope rise from hardship? Hit that like button if it moved you, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the human spirit. Until next time, keep holding on. Brighter days are always ahead. You know, wrapping up Elijah's journey feels like closing a chapter on a book that's far from over. But let's dive deeper into those lingering ripples, because the true beauty lies in the details of transformation. In the weeks following the revelations, the city buzzed with a new energy, as if the air itself carried a sense of awakening. Media outlets, from local NHK broadcasts with their polished anchors to international feeds like CNN's Asia desk, dissected the scandals in primetime segments, their reports flashing across screens in cafes and homes where families paused their dinners to watch. Elijah found himself fielding interview requests from journalists who arrived with notebooks and sympathetic smiles, but he chose carefully, speaking not for fame, but to amplify voices like Marcus's and the students, ensuring the spotlight shared. "It's not about me," he'd say, his voice warm over the airwaves, the camera capturing the subtle lines of experience on his face. "It's about building a society where everyone feels at home, no matter their background." These appearances, aired during evening news slots, sparked living room conversations across Japan, parents discussing bias with their children, friends debating over beers in izakayas. The emotional layers peeled back slowly for Elijah. His bruises healed over days, the purple fading to yellow, then gone, but the scars of humiliation lingered like faint echoes, softened by the outpouring of support that arrived in waves. Letters poured in daily, from expats sharing solidarity stories of their own encounters in foreign lands, from Japanese citizens expressing regret and resolve with heartfelt apologies penned in careful English or accompanied by translations. One particularly moving missive came from a young police recruit in Tokyo, his handwriting youthful and earnest. "Your story changed how I see my badge. I joined to protect, not to overlook. Thank you for showing me the way." Elijah kept that one on his nightstand, a reminder during quieter nights when doubts crept in. James's role evolved too, his days filled with meetings in glass-walled offices overlooking the bustling streets of Osaka. As bureau head, he implemented the reforms with precision, drawing on his dual heritage to bridge cultures in ways that felt authentic and urgent. Father-son talks deepened over those months, often during quiet dinners at home, sushi platters spread on the low table, the sizzle of tempura from the kitchen mingling with their words. "You taught me resilience," James admitted one evening. Chopsticks paused mid-air, the city lights twinkling outside like distant stars. "Growing up, watching you handle the stairs back home, it shaped me. Now, let's pass it on." The grandkids, wide-eyed and curious, listened from the floor, learning early that dignity was a shield and a sword, their innocent questions, "Why did the bad man hit Grandpa?" leading to gentle lessons on kindness and standing tall. Hiroshi's path took a turn toward redemption, adding nuance to the story's resolution. Community service mandated by the court placed him at the same center Elijah volunteered at, where awkward encounters bloomed into tentative conversations amid the clatter of setting up chairs or organizing supplies. At first, Hiroshi avoided eye contact, his movements stiff with shame, but over time, shared tasks broke the ice. "I was wrong," he confessed one rainy afternoon, as they folded flyers under the shelter of the center's awning, the patter of drops a soothing backdrop. Blind to my own hate, fed by stupid online groups, I see now how it poisons everything. Elijah nodded, offering a hand without hesitation. "We all start somewhere. The key is moving forward. Make it count." It wasn't a fairy tale redemption, with no grand hugs or instant friendship, but a real messy step toward understanding, watered by accountability and small acts of amends, like Hiroshi volunteering extra hours to mentor at-risk youth on empathy. The broader ripples touched lives unseen, creating a web of change that extended far beyond one man's ordeal. The Somali student, inspired by the coverage, reopened his case with new vigor, winning not just compensation, but a public apology from the festival organizers, delivered in a ceremony where cherry blossoms fell like confetti. The Jamaican teacher, buoyed by the momentum, led workshops on bias at local schools, her classroom filled with eager students whose questions sparked hope for the next generation. Osaka's streets felt subtly shifted. Fewer stares in the markets, more smiles from shopkeepers who now greeted Elijah by name, offering extra samples of fresh fruit as quiet gestures of respect. In quieter reflections, Elijah often walked the paths of Osaka Castle Park, the ancient stones underfoot a reminder of enduring strength. The scandals had exposed cracks, but in mending them, society grew stronger. His story became a touchstone, referenced in university lectures on social justice, where professors used it to illustrate how individual resilience could drive systemic reform. And so, as seasons turned, cherry blossoms giving way to summer festivals, then autumn leaves, Elijah's life settled into a rhythm of renewed purpose. He taught more classes, shared more stories, and watched as his grandkids grew, their world a little fairer, because one man refused to bow.